In the heart of the African wilderness, there's a silence deeper and more profound than you can imagine. It's the silence of the midday sun, where even the savanna holds its breath against the heat. But sometimes that silence is shattered, not by a hunt, but by a cry for help born of raw, primal fear. Today, near the sun-scorched red cliffs, a crisis unfolded. Leo, just a curious cub, chased a flicker of life onto this, a massive, decaying log, suspended precariously over a deadly gorge. And now he's trapped. The wood is scorching hot, and he's terrified. His mother, Diva, the very definition of a fierce guardian, can only watch. Her roars are not of aggression, but of agonizing helplessness. She screams in utter frustration, realizing that in this moment, the lioness must beg for aid from the one species she's learned to distrust. Then, we hear the faint sounds of an engine. Ranger Ethan, he didn't just hear the roar, he heard the tone of the roar. And he knew, what you are about to witness is a 10-minute countdown against nature's clock, a daring rescue, the blazing midday sun, and a mother's impossible choice between instinct and trust. Ethan brought his vehicle to a gentle stop, the engine noise dying instantly into the oppressive midday silence. Immediately, he felt the heat, an almost physical punch to the face. The midday temperature here doesn't just warm the skin, it scorches the air. He spotted Diva. She stood poised on the cliff edge, her body taut as a bowstring, her golden coat almost glowing under the brutal sun. 10 years of experience taught Ethan that Diva was twice as dangerous now. The heat amplified her natural irritability and aggression, turning her into a living, ready-to-ignite spark. But the faint, desperate whimpers of Leo from the swaying log were an emergency that could not be delayed. Leo was panting, his small tongue hanging out. Signs of heat exhaustion could quickly become more fatal than the risk of falling. Ethan opened his door, his movements deliberate, almost invisible. He clipped his safety harness to his body, securing every buckle. The ropes and gear were more than just rescue tools. They were his commitment. He moved without rush, careful not to escalate the pressure. He began to speak, his voice soft and steady, as if lulling a child. He didn't expect Diva to understand the words, but he hoped she would recognize the intent. "I'm not the enemy, Diva. I'm here for Leo," he whispered, though his voice was almost swallowed by the hot air. Diva reacted. She lowered her body, shifting her weight forward, adopting the perfect attack posture. Every hair on her shoulders bristled. This was a moment of intense, nonverbal negotiation. Diva's hunting instinct screamed at her to rip this intruder apart, but her cub's desperate cries were a conflicting order. She was caught between the ferocity of instinct and the desperate gamble of hope. Ethan continued to advance, step by step, as if walking on glass. He avoided direct eye contact, focusing instead on the space between her and the cliff edge. This respect was key. He needed Diva to believe, just for a moment, that his action was for Leo's benefit. Finally, Ethan stood about 6 feet from Diva. She let out a short, powerful, and warning roar. The sound was no longer desperation, but a reluctant permission. Diva had made an extraordinary choice, a temporary truce. She had chosen hope. Now, the burden fell entirely on Ethan. He had to act quickly and successfully, because Diva would not grant him a second chance. The psychological standoff was over. The physical test against the rotten log and the deep gorge had begun. Diva's grudging permission did nothing to lessen the danger. If anything, it increased the stakes. Ethan knelt at the cliff edge, securing the rope to a sturdy outcrop. He looked down into the dark, yawning gorge beneath the log. That sheer drop was a chilling reminder of the consequences if the decaying would fail. He began to inch out, prone, flattening himself against the hot, abrasive surface of the log. He could feel the scorching heat radiating through the thick fabric of his uniform. His entire focus was on balance and minimizing pressure. This was where his experience, precision, and courage had to converge flawlessly. Midway out, where he was completely exposed, a sound stopped Ethan's heart, a tiny dry creak or snap from the deadwood. He froze instantly, holding his breath. Was the log cracking, or was it just the rope adjusting? The sound was minute, but under this pressure, it was a thunderclap. He was forced to pause for a terrifying fraction of a second to assess, delaying his action, a luxury he could not afford. Simultaneously, his body reacted to the heat and stress. Salty sweat poured down, spotting the log, and critically ran into his eyes. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, blinking furiously to clear his vision, but the blinding glare reflecting off the red rock still caused him to squint and haze over. Impaired vision in this critical moment was a fatal hazard, but the greatest danger remained at his back. As Ethan neared Leo, Diva enforced her final warning. She let out a deafening, sharp roar right behind his head. It wasn't just a roar. It was a shriek of primal fury, a final deterrent. The sheer force of the sound almost caused him to lose his balance, flooding his system with adrenaline. She didn't attack, but the move clarified the boundary. You save him, but you dare not harm him. Ignoring the roar and the imminent threat, Ethan focused on Leo. The cub was trembling, exhausted, and barely holding on. Ethan reached out, murmuring final reassurances. Then, with one quick, decisive, yet gentle motion, he took hold of Leo. Feeling the cub's small, hot body in his arms, he quickly shielded it from the sun with his own frame. The mission was not complete. He had to bring Leo back to safety. The retreat was even harder, inch by inch, dragging his weight and Leo's across the hot log, all under Diva's cold, demanding surveillance. The retreat proved twice as difficult as the approach. Ethan had to pull his full weight back while holding the exhausted Leo, every shift a physical and neurological challenge. He had to keep his breathing steady and his movements as fluid as possible to avoid any further creaks or jolts from the deteriorating log. Cradled in Ethan's arms, Leo stopped whimpering. The cub leaned into his chest, sensing the warmth and security, an instinctual reaction to being protected. In that moment, Leo was not a predator. He was simply a frightened child being rescued. Ethan felt a wave of profound relief, yet he knew his role wasn't over. Ethan understood Diva's perspective. She was still watching his every move, and her vigilance would only cease when Leo was entirely safe. Her tension didn't subside. It simply transitioned from ready to attack to intense surveillance. Ethan felt her gaze, heavy, expectant, but no longer overtly aggressive. She was holding onto the thread of hope he had provided. Finally, Ethan managed to drag himself back over the lip of the cliff. He lay there for a few seconds, utterly depleted by the midday heat and the emotional strain, his breath coming in ragged gasps. After unhooking his harness, he gently placed Leo on the ground. Leo staggered up, wasting no time to assess his surroundings or thank his savior. With the last of his strength, the cub darted toward the only source of comfort he knew, Diva. The moment of reunion was an explosion of relief. Diva neither growled nor hesitated. She frenziedly licked Leo, checking her son from head to toe. Her entire body seemed to tremble, not from fear, but from overwhelming relief. Her heat, her desperation, and her internal conflict were instantly soothed. Ethan backed away, giving the pair their space. He knew his role was done. He was merely a bridge, a guardian of the sacred bond between mother and child. Diva still didn't leave. After ensuring Leo was unharmed, she looked up at Ethan. This gaze was fundamentally different. It was no longer the look of an enemy or a warning. It was a deep, long, profound look of silent respect. In that instant, the division between the wild world and the human world nearly dissolved. It was the acknowledgement of a lioness for his courage and humanity. Then, she turned, leading Leo away. The pair disappeared into the shade of nearby rocks, leaving Ethan alone with the almost painful stillness of the African midday. Ethan stood there, alone. He unbuckled his gear, feeling the heavy weight of exhaustion and the fading adrenaline. He looked at the deep gorge, at the rotten log, and then towards the direction Diva and Leo had vanished. His face was streaked with sweat and dirt, but his eyes held a deep sense of peace. The moment he had just lived was not about conquering nature. It was about the triumph of trust. Diva, the emblem of the wild, had suspended her instinct to accept aid. She showed Ethan that despite the biological and historical barriers, a fundamental thread of connection, the thread of life and protection, still exists. Ethan gathered his ropes. He didn't need spoken thanks or a nuzzle. Diva's final look of silent respect was the ultimate reward. He understood that these actions weren't for accolades. He did it because every life matters, and because the fragile balance of nature requires people willing to stand on the edge. He looked out over the vast African sky, contemplating what made a lioness trust. It was empathy. It was recognizing that he carried no ill will. This story is not just a rescue. It's about restoring faith that humanity can be the protector, not just the intruder. This midday rescue is a powerful reminder. True courage lies not in confrontation, but in gentleness and reverence when facing death and fear. It proves that when we act with pure compassion, we can bridge even the deepest divides. Ethan did his part today. He restored peace to a lion family and secured the fragile balance of the reserve. Now, that responsibility falls to us. Conservation isn't just the work of daring rangers. It's about the choices we all make every day. If the story of Leo and Ethan moved you, let it strengthen your belief in the good that's possible. Share this story to spread the message of connection between Diva's kingdom and our world. Ethan's courage saved Leo's life. Our care will secure the future of the entire reserve. Don't let this story stop on your screen. Take action. Support conservation organizations and the rangers like Ethan who risk their lives daily to protect these magnificent creatures. Let us join the pride, where every lion's breath is protected and every human action is guided by compassion.